I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
The split is over. Listen, Marty, the last man I killed, I did it for $5,000. For $85,000, I'd kill you 17 times. Hands down, best line in the movie. Okay, here we are. Welcome welcome to The Split.
The Split. Now, again, we're partway through your series of 1968 crime films. Mm-hmm. What was it about this one that that drew you to it when you were putting your list together?
Well, crime films also, it's a heist film, right? I read the tagline for it, and it's clearly a heist film. And then I looked at the cast, right? Oh. Ernest Borgnine, Gene Hackman, Jack Klugman, James Whitmore, Warren Oates, Donald Sutherland, Diane Carroll, and Jim Brown. Like, those people in a movie together are just compelling to me in terms of movies in 1968. Like, I was in it for the cast. And that's literally where I stopped and said, well, I'm definitely picking this movie. I guess I also looked at the IMDb. It's a 6. It's a straight 6 on the IMDb scale, and that says it's at least watchable.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because, like, when I put my list together for the series we did right before this of heist films, returning to that, I ended up inadvertently pulling all 60s heist films, and this one still didn't pop into my register. And I think that's interesting.
It's crazy
that I hadn't heard of this one in my list of options. And then I watch it and I'm like, this is another great 60s heist film. Like, I had a great time with it. I really enjoyed the team, like the set of actors that they bring here. I enjoyed the whole premise and the way that they pulled it off. I had a great time with this.
Yeah, me too. I think this movie does some things by virtue of the fact that it was made in 1968. One of the major kind of thematic elements is dealing with race, right? It's dealing with the fact that Jim Brown is black and everybody else is white, and one of them is supremely racist, and yet the white woman is very much into Jim Brown. And so there's a lot of sort of conflicting ideologies for the time. And I think that's an interesting angle that the movie brings. It also, it does, like, you could take that part out of it, and I would love to see this movie remade with a modern cast, because I loved the original. I don't think there'd be any love lost seeing this story with a modern cast. It does some really interesting things, and I think could be updated in a way that is really compelling.
I'd be curious to see how they would update it, because this also is a heist that specifically the heist is so of its time, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the plan for this heist. Jim Brown builds a team. So we've got our whole team building, which we'll have to talk about because it was fun the way he chose to do it in this film. He builds his team, and the plan to steal is from a playoff game at this the LA Coliseum, where they realize how much money is funneled into the game. Like, when you fill a crowd with thousands of people, or fill a stadium with thousands of people, and they all pay a ticket price, they're all buying food and concessions and programs and whatever else they're selling, they realize... All in cash, right. This is a period where there's just no credit cards at all. And so everybody is paying with cash. And they realize how much money they can make off with. And so they put this plan together to steal all of it. Now, that would be the trick in figuring out how do you rework this heist so it's updated in today's financial systems that we have in place, and security systems and every other system, because there are so many systems we have in place that aren't in place here. Like, we're just going to go in the night before, go through the gate, and we're just going to park an ambulance in there. No one's going to notice. Like, they get away with a lot of stuff in this that I think makes it a very specific heist. But that's something I really liked about it, because I don't think in the last set of heist films that we just talked about, I don't think that we necessarily ran into any that were so, like, period specific as far as
Yeah.
the way the heist had to be done in that particular time.
That's right. That's right. I mean, the fact that that any remake of this movie would have to be a techno thriller heist movie
Or
actually
a period
makes it,
film.
or a period film actually makes it incredibly risky, because as
Yeah.
soon as you bring technology in, there's an opportunity for it to just be stupid.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And but I still I think what they accomplished here, right, to your point, let's just go in the night before and set up shop, is kind of extraordinary. And the fact that the entire heist was pulled off in plain sight, right?
Yeah.
Like they were in the office as the security people were handing money to them. That is a beautiful ballet of theft that I found myself really enjoying in this movie.
But it was funny because I'm like, I mean, they literally plant themselves in the building, like you said, the night before. They go in the middle of the night, they park an ambulance there, and then they just hang out in the office the rest of the night. All the workers come in that morning. They're there all day. The game is an afternoon game. And so, because I think, don't they say at one point, like kickoffs at 6 or something like that?
Yeah.
So it's like, or maybe it's not quite that late.
It couldn't
but anyway,
be. I think because it's still very much daylight.
It's
when
very
they leave.
daylight when they leave. Yeah. So it's probably, they're probably leaving, they leave 2 minutes before the game's over.
Yeah.
And it still is pretty sunny outside. So, but still, they are there in this place for, I don't know,
almost 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's probably 18 hours.
Exactly. And that's a hell of a lot of time. I mean, are they taking bathroom breaks?
Did
are
they eat?
eating? Right. Did they send somebody up to go get concessions? Like, what are they doing?
That's like the ultimate. They just go in there so they could take money that they've stolen and buy concessions with it and steal that money twice.
Right.
That's brilliant.
It's so funny. So, I mean, I liked that heist. I thought it was a lot of fun, and the way they put it together. And I mean, I suppose we should go back just for a little bit and talk a little bit more about race, that you brought that up as one of the elements of the film, because I think it's definitely something that's here. Jim Brown is our lead character. He's the one who is brought in by Gladys, Julie Harris's character, to do this heist. She's the one who has the idea. She's going to finance it. He brings in the team, builds it, and they get the whole thing going. And also, it all ends up involving his ex-wife, because per Gladys, she's like, why don't you just store the money overnight at Ellie's place? Mm-hmm. And which ends up leading to all the problems in the final part of the film, which is the title, the split. That's what it all boils down to, is the split of the money. But I liked having Jim Brown as our lead, and it does. I think it's interesting because Jim Brown actually said to Roger Ebert when the film came out, he said, "What I want to do is play roles as a black man instead of playing black man's roles. You know, the guy in The Split, for example, could be any color, and I don't make a big thing out of my race. If you try to preach, people give you a little sympathy, and then they want to get out of the way. So you don't preach, you tell the story. I have a theory: an audience doesn't need to get wrapped up in blackness every time they see a Negro actor, and a movie doesn't have to be about race just because there's a Negro in it. If there's a bigot in the audience, he has to keep reminding himself, that's a black man, that's a Negro, because the storyline has left him way behind, man, way behind. Just tell the story, and before you know it, the cat will be identifying with you, and he won't even know how it happened." Mm-hmm. So that's a quote from Jim Brown.
Smart.
In 1968. And that's exactly how he plays it, which I think is a great idea. And what that does is it lets it be a story about, thieves putting a plan in place to commit a robbery. Mm-hmm. And then it layers in on top of that characters that we have, like Warren Oates' character, who you said is very racist and doesn't want to work with this guy, doesn't trust him because he's black. And that ends up creating tension, particularly once the money disappears. And we've got the whole last part of the film as they, I think fairly, a lot of them are just angry at McClain because the money's gone. But I think Marty, Warren Oates' character, uses it as a chance to also, be abusive.
Be racist.
And be racist. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting element.
I do think it's interesting. I think it's really interesting, the balance of trust in this, because I mean, so much of this movie is a trust and betrayal movie, right? It's about building a team based on trust, which they do not do, right? Foundationally, the way the team is set up is not in a way that is considered trustworthy. But back to that in a second. when things fall apart, it's Jim Brown who goes to everybody and bullies them and says, "Where's the money?" thinking that they stole the money.
Yeah.
And the balance of tension between those who believe that Jim Brown is right and that one of them stole the money versus the groupthink that erupts against Jim Brown, against McClain's character, is a really interesting tension as we transition into the third act of the movie. And the fact is, McClain does not have a trustworthy angle, right? Nobody believes him. They're all criminals. And so he becomes a vessel for their, rage. I think that's really fascinating. And the fact that he then has to sort of re-betray the group by turning to, Detective Brill, Hackman's character, to kind of resolve things is interesting. Everything sort of dissolves. There's no getaway.
No, yeah.
For the team in this movie.
Yeah, and to your point, it is so interesting the way that he builds the team. It is
let's talk about that.
The least trustworthy way for a person like this to put a team together. It's not like we had in Grand Slam where he goes to somebody who's got his filing cabinet of all the people he knows that are the playboy and the safecracker and whatever. No, and it's not like, Ocean's 11 where it's just, hey, who do we know? Hey, let's bring all these people in. This is a guy who knows the people he wants to use, but needs essentially to prove that they are as good as he's heard they are. So, for example, when he goes and talks to Ernest Borgnine, he shows up in his office and just starts like a fight with
wailing on him.
Yeah. And it's just this big fight. And Klinger's like, what the hell is going on? And they're just fighting. And he's just like, and then it's over. And he's just like, yeah, you're good. And he walks out. And that's kind of like, okay. And so that's what he does. Like he's testing them all. Like when it's Klugman, it's dry, like this, he's racing him through the hills over Hollywood.
And I mean, could have killed him. Like, I think there was, like, he could pull his punches with Borgnine, right? He could just stop punching and be okay. And that's what happened. But Klugman, he could have legitimately killed the guy driving him off a cliff. And I thought that's bold. That is a bold audition to get that done. And finally, Sutherland. The funny one is Warren Oates, right? Yeah. That he traps them in an underground safe with a light trigger. Like, where are they?
And why is that safe just sitting there? Like that was the strangest. It's just like, who's like put this safe here and leaves it available for access as needed?
Right. That was a risky one, but I love the fact that, he has to take off his pants to throw it over this light sensor to keep the door open so that he can get out. That was amusing. That was a funny bit of comic relief. And then, of course, we have Donald Sutherland, who gets the fastest audition, which felt very like sort of phoned in. He just, does a little bit of mirror play, gets Sutherland to pull his gun and shoot at the mirror, and then he's done. That was apparently good enough.
Yeah, right.
Nothing as invested in either of the first two. The Borgnine fight is a strong fight, and the Klugman drive is excellent driving.
Yeah. Yeah, it did feel like by the time we got to Sutherland, who was the last one, that they were realizing they needed to move the story along and just like, okay, we just need to get these guys recruited and get this movie happening. And so,
it felt like, oh God, there are 4 guys. I thought there were 3. We got to, okay, let's go. Let's take an evening and shoot Sutherland.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. It was this strangest one because then McClain just leaves and Sutherland, like his character doesn't like go after him or anything. Like it's just like, he just like, okay, who was that guy in the hallway who had a gun at me? And
who had a gun at me, and I was just going to kill him in the hallway. I was just going to shoot him in the hotel.
Yeah. It wasn't even a hotel, was it? It was like where he lived. Didn't he greet the guy
like
at the
condo or something like that?
Yeah, right. So it's like, blowing mirrors out of his own building's hallways.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like right in front of his place.
Yeah.
Subtle.
Right. But it was fun. It was fun to see. But you're right. It does build a sense of untrustworthiness out of the gate. And so McClain, they all agree to be part of this heist because, upwards of $85,000 a person. They by the time they split the money, the earnings from this game, they're going to it's a great amount of money, and so yeah, of course they're going to do it. But I don't know if I think it's interesting because that really leads to the attitude that everybody has in the latter half of the film after the money disappears.
Yeah.
And it's important.
Yeah, it is. It is important. How the fact that this movie transitions from a heist film, trust and betrayal movie, right, into the re-betrayal at the end of the movie, as they have their steam room comeuppance, and I guess that's when they all start shooting each other, and then we have to transition to meet our friend, the detective.
Yeah.
Did that seem out of the blue to you?
Well, it didn't. I mean, it seemed because the heist, they essentially get away with everything halfway through the film. Like that's kind of, a good setup for the film. And then we have the money disappear. And that puts us into a situation where we've got to kind of figure out the plans on what's going to happen now and where'd the money go. And so it made sense to me that a detective would get involved in the story. Like I wasn't surprised here that we end up doing this. And maybe it's also because we're just coming off of talking about the Boston Strangler, which also is a film that kind of has this bifurcated element. Like we follow the cops trying to figure it out for so much in the first half. And then finally, halfway through the film, we finally meet, what's his name? We finally meet our killer. And that's when we kind of follow him for the rest of the film as he continues committing these murders and then gets caught. And so this film, I guess, weirdly felt of the time. Like it just, like the fact that we end up meeting this pivotal character halfway through the film didn't end up surprising me.
The fact that it was a pivotal character, and part of it is the inflation of Gene Hackman after the 60s, right? Introducing him so late, but he has so decades of weight behind him now that makes it odd that we'd meet him in essentially the third act. But the twist of having this terrible landlord experience, and having the landlord steal all the stuff, and then the exchange between Hackman and the landlord not happening on screen.
Yeah.
I thought was an interesting choice. It felt a little bit empty to me. Like we were we didn't know where we were going to go. So we wrote in some backstory, some exposition.
Yeah, it does happen quickly. And I suppose to a certain extent, we're watching it from McClain's perspective still at this particular point. Like he's met the detective and has a sense as to what's going on. Like he sets up this whole thing because, I mean, just to say, like Ellie is his ex-wife. We talked about that, Diane Carroll, and their relationship is still a little rocky, but she does agree to, while they're kind of, I don't know why they don't just hold the money themselves, but that's kind of part of the story. They, she's holding all the money
because
and all the
clean.
weapons.
She has no record.
She's clean. She has no record. So she's holding everything. And then McClain is going to come over the next day to get it so that they can then do the split. As opposed to, again, they just doing the split right after the heist. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, it's all part of the title. So she just happens to have a terrible landlord. James Whitmore is very pervy Herb Sutro, who we only see a couple times, but he clearly is into her and essentially goes into her apartment to rape her and does so. And then she goes after a gun and tries to save herself, but he gets the gun, shoots her like he's a little more into it than you would think.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah.
Look what I have.
Right. And like his phallic rape representation right there
Yeah.
as he blows her away and makes off with the money. And that's why McClain and no one else has any idea as to what actually happened here. And it's only when McClain comes back and kind of gets caught in the middle of all of this when a couple cops recognize it. And that's how he kind of goes to Brill. And Brill gives him the clue that, could be the landlord. And that's when all the pieces fall into place. So at the point of the film that you're talking about, where it's a newspaper where they see the headline and find out that Brill killed this psycho who had killed a woman. Now the crime has been solved. And now McClain and his team know, because it doesn't mention the money at all, that Brill has the money. So for me, it worked that at this moment, we're not following Brill as he goes to get the money and kill Sutro. I kind of liked that we don't stay there, and we don't really get to spend time with Brill, except I'm trying to remember if we're ever with Brill when we're not also with McClain, and I don't think so.
I think I think we are. I think there is a scene where we are with Brill as he's looking through the apartment. And then it cuts to the guys in the steam room.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible.
And he gets out of his car and he goes home. But it's brief. It's brief, and I'm second guessing myself a little bit. But it is brief, and the fact that McClain comes back to him at the end and says, like, "This is how we're going to do it," and I'm a man of honor. I only want 1/6. I only want what I was originally contracted for. Makes this one of those movies where the detective stands to make a lot more out of this heist, which is weird, especially coming out of movies where good guys, weren't allowed to do bad things.
Well, and it is a weird, and he doesn't in the end, right? He agrees at the end that I'm going to actually turn this in because it will give me my bump in detective ranking, and I'll get to be first detective instead of third. And so that's an interesting bit. Part of me, knowing that McClain does walk off with a chunk of the money, I did question his logic in why does he say he only wants 1/6? Like, why not just say half? Let's just split it then. Like, I'm not sure what the benefit is of making him do that.
Especially because $85,000 is like that. Inflation is one of the things that makes this movie challenging, because you have to constantly do math. Like, what is it in today's dollars? So you can see just how big a deal a $500,000 split 6 ways was.
Yeah. Right. It does make you wonder, though. Why not just, push the cop for half?
Right.
I don't know.
Because he's not Robin Hood. It's not like he's giving away his half, but that's his display of honor, right? That's his display of maintaining his aesthetic or his sort of moral background as a trustworthy guy. He came in, agreed to a thing, and he's going to live by it. That's his code.
But he didn't agree with Hackman with that. And so that's, I guess, part of his code that is weird, because it's like, so go with me on this. Mm-hmm. If Hackman wasn't involved and somehow, or maybe he was, but maybe he gets killed, and let's just say that McClain is standing there with a duffel bag full of $500,000, is he going to say, well, only 1/6 of it is mine. Everyone else is dead, so I'm just going to turn the other 5/6 back in.
Yeah, I'm going to go give it to charity, to the orphanage. Yeah.
Like, that's
this movie. I guess this money can do a lot of good, Andy.
Well, I guess it's an interesting element, and I do feel like it becomes an interesting trope that we have in heist films sometimes, where you have to kind of your character is a thief and a burglar and therefore a bad guy, but by doing this, is this what they're giving to this McClain character to make him the actual good guy of the film? He's the protagonist and we like him because he has a moral code. And even though it makes kind of no sense in context, it's going to still work out.
Yes. I mean, I think all of that. I think once you're in the movie, I mean, did you stop and think about that while you're watching the movie?
No, I guess not. It only came up because, of our conversation here, but
yeah. And that's what I think, because you're in the hero mode, right? You're watching the guy be the hero. So when he sits down in front of Hackman and says, I only want what I was agreed to get, right? If the rest helps you, so be it. I buy that because I'm on the code road. Yeah. I'm on the hero's code road. And I think it works for me. Even in hindsight, that's where the money ends up. The thought experiment is really interesting. I don't think my hunch is he would not give it to the orphanage. But maybe there's a world where he sets up some sort of a beneficial organization in the name of Ellie because she's dead, right? That's there's always room to write that would fit within the code on the code road.
Yeah. And I guess that's where we sit with it, is that there is an element to the story. And honestly, he's working with a cop, albeit a shady cop, but a cop who he's going to have to cut a deal with. And when you're cutting a deal with a cop, it's like, well, you kind of are in a position where you're probably better off making the cop feel like you're giving them the better deal.
Yeah.
And that may be also part of it, right?
For sure. But it does beg the question of justice in this movie, right? Because Ellie's dead. Ostensibly, McClain is on the hunt for her killer. He finds out about her killer and who killed her killer. What is the last act's statement on McClain's search for justice?
Well, I feel like, as far as search for justice, I feel like they got the money back, and that was the crux of the end of the film, right? They had the money and they essentially got rid of everyone else. It was either we're going to have to split it with people or we're going to get rid of people. And everyone ended up kind of coming after them. So it was just easier to kill everybody. So everyone dies, right? Mm-hmm. And we're left with McClain standing there in the junkyard with Detective Brill, and Brill gives him the money. Well, we don't see it happen, but we know that what's going to happen is, per their agreement, Brill will give him his sixth of the money, and then he, as he says, he's going to actually turn the rest in so that he can get his promotion. And then we have McClain going to an airport and leaving, and we have that moment where, as he's walking to the gate, we hear a woman's voice, which sounds very much like Ellie's, call him out. And I couldn't help but think that the statement that was being made, it's not really a search for justice anymore, but it's just a sense of how the ghosts will be haunting him now. Like, it just seemed like Ellie, all of the stuff that went on here, like he wasn't taking care of somebody who did mean something to him, and he's now perpetually going to be haunted by her.
Yeah. I did not take it quite so negatively as you did. I just thought that, like, oh, she'll be with him forever. Isn't that sweet? You're like, oh, she'll haunt his nightmares till the end of his days. Yeah, no, but I think we're in agreement on the voice of Ellie and what it represents. Either it's a loving guide on his journey through life, or baggage that he drags to his grave. Right. But she's with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, that was something that felt of the era to end the film that way, where we, I don't necessarily think that it's of the, like a remnant of the production code type of storytelling where it's like, well, he's getting away with money, but we need to show that that he's going to be haunted by choices that he made. Like, I don't feel like it's a production code thing, but it does feel like there are elements of that decision here. And it just kind of feels like we're almost the 70s and we want to be telling these darker stories and give people these takes that psychologically they might be a victor, but psychologically they may be broken now. And I found that to be so interesting.
I think it's really interesting. And I like that you brought that up, because to me, it does feel so much like this was MGM saying, or people, individuals at MGM saying, look, we make a bunch of family-friendly grandma movies. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we let people do some things that are adult in nature. And as a result, they get the first R for this movie, right, from the MPAA, of the new guidelines.
Rating,
That's a big deal. It just feels like a significant departure from what MGM was doing at the time. And I think that's fascinating. And to your point, is it a true and intentional shift away from the Hays Code, or is it just the studio doing what studio does? And here's the content that we think makes a good movie, and we have the stars to do it. And we're not really thinking about transitions. Either way, this film sits at a certain place in history and time that makes it a milestone, and for MGM, and in kind of an interesting way.
I don't know if I know enough about MGM's film. I'm looking right now of films that MGM released in the 60s. And I'm going to read through 1968 just to give you a sense of the films that they released that year. Ready?
I'm ready.
A Man Called Dagger, the biggest bundle of them all. Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter. I regret my choice already because now that damn song is going to be in my head. Oh, I hate that song. Soul Madrid, The Power, Day of the Evil Gun, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, Stay Away, Joe, Guns for San Sebastian, 2001, A Space Odyssey, A Stranger in Town, Battle Beneath the Earth, Speedway, Where Were You When the Lights Went Out, The Helicopter Spies, this is a Man from U.N.C.L.E. film, Dark of the Sun, Kiss the Other Sheik, A Time to Sing, The Legend of Lila Clare, A Man, a Horse, a Gun, The Young Runaways, Hot Millions, Revenge for Revenge, The Subject Was Roses, Live a Little, Love a Little, Ice Station Zebra, The Split, The Shoes of the Fisherman, The Impossible Years, The Fixer.
It does, looking at just 1968, it does sound like MGM was saying, okay, we're going to make a bunch of movies that are going to reflect our transition now, and none of them are getting an R, so we're going to keep making them until we get one.
Yeah,
Right?
I know, right. It's interesting. Even going into 1969, I'm trying to see if there's any I recognize that I would say, oh, that may be an R-rated film. I don't know them well enough to actually be able to say that. So I don't know. But it is interesting to look at and just kind of get a sense as to what this particular studio was putting out, you know?
Well, because what Jim Brown, I mean, apart from this being his first kind of lead role in a film, right? That's of note. The fact that I don't think, at least what I'm reading here, is that MGM had not to this point featured a black actor as a protagonist, as a central figure in a crime thriller until The Split.
Was he was in The Dirty Dozen, and that is essentially a crime thriller, right?
Yeah, was that an MGM film?
MGM, I don't know. That was, it was MGM, 67. So
interesting.
Yeah. So he was
but he was not
and he was in Ice Station
protagonist.
Zebra.
He was not the protagonist, right? This movie.
Well, but you said lead. No, he's the lead, right? But he was one of the team on that one, as I recall.
Right.
And he was in Ice Station Zebra the same year as this, but not the lead in that either.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the question. Like, as a lead, I think that is a little different. Although, was he, let's see. No, he wasn't in, let's see. When did I'm just trying to think of Bill Cosby now, because Bill Cosby may have beat him as far as a black lead in a thriller. Well, if the I Spy films, or I Spy show, but Bill Cosby was also in, what is that? Hickey and Boggs. That was, no, that was a few years later. That was 72. So, but yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you're right. It is pretty interesting.
I'm just saying, confluence of events.
Yeah, right. Also, just going back to Bill Cosby, not that that's something you should regularly do.
Is this a Bill Cosby show that we're doing now?
But I do think that it's important to note that this was a film where Jim Brown actually had an African American stuntman doing his work. And it was the founding member of the Black Stuntmen's Association, Calvin Brown, who actually did the stunts for the film. And what used to happen is that when there were stunts that were happening, is that they would put a white person in blackface, essentially. They would paint down a white performer to do the stunts. And Bill Cosby on the show I Spy was actually a key part in that change, and because he refused to actually allow that to happen for him. He wanted it to be a black stuntman, and that was a big change that happened in the 60s, and so it's important. It's good to note that Jim Brown actually had an African American stuntman here.
That is really fascinating.
Yeah. Yep.
Good to know. Okay, so confluence of events. I think I just to close the loop. I think that 1968 notwithstanding, I don't know a lot of those films that MGM was producing, but I do think their reputation as the Singin' in the Rain studio and the Ben-Hur studio. This is a different kind of film for MGM in the 60s, and the 68 is probably a strong transition point for the studio.
I wonder if MGM, along with other studios, were realizing when because it was which studio, I'm trying to remember now, the 1963 20th Century Fox almost went bankrupt doing Cleopatra. And I wonder if from that point to this point, these studios were realizing we need to change things because we can't be spending as much on these epics and these big stories and everything, and let's find other ways to direct our projects.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What is your stance on Gordon Flemyng?
Our fair director, Gordon Flemyng, a Scottish director who also was a writer and producer, only directed 6 features, mostly a TV person, and the movies that he directed are 2 of them are actually Doctor Who movies. I think that they were. I don't know. I don't know enough about Doctor Who. I don't know if it was like one of those movies that's actually 2 episodes squeezed together to make a movie that gets released. But he did direct 2 of those. He directed
Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Yeah.
God. That is one of those where and that came out just before the split, and it makes you wonder, what did they see in Doctor Who and the Daleks and say, Gordon's our man for the split.
Well, he actually he did Doctor Who and the Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, and then he did Great Catherine, and that's actually the film that they saw that they said, "Oh, let's bring this guy in." It is based on a George Bernard Shaw play. It's a like a royalty comedy. Peter O'Toole is a British officer who's sent to the Russian court of Catherine the Great as an envoy, and then he has to contend with Potemkin and all of his machinations. Zero Mostel plays Potemkin. So there is this sense of the comedy that I think that they recognized in Flemyng, and I think largely this is the second of these Parker adaptations. We'll talk about that in a bit, but Robert Chardoff and Irwin Winkler had just done Point Blank and wanted to do another one, so they decided to do this one, and they had seen. I think they were aiming for John Borman, who did Point Blank, but they went with Flemyng after seeing Great Catherine. So I don't think I've seen anything of his. I've never seen any of the Doctor Who stuff, and he's directed so few films. After this is just The Last Grenade and Flight into Hell. I just know very little of him. Have you seen anything else of his? Did you watch those Doctor Who movies?
No, I haven't watched the Doctor Who movies, and I'm kind of in a Doctor Who phase right now, but I'm in the current stuff, so I haven't gone back to the 60s. Who knows if I'll get there? But I'm with you. I have not seen much of his stuff besides this. I may have seen, there's a show he did in the early 90s called Lovejoy that he directed a couple of episodes of that I would have no way of knowing what his particular stamp was on that movie, on that show.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He's kind of come out of nowhere for me, even though he's got, lots and lots of credits.
Again, it's so much TV. And when you see that he's done things like The Saint and The Avengers, it's like, oh, okay, I can see them recognizing in him, aside from Great Catherine, but I can see him doing those sorts of shows and then fitting well in a film like this. So.
Yeah. You want to talk about the Parker adaptations?
Yeah. So this is yet another of these Parker adaptations. We have talked about one in the past. Do you remember which one? It was a member bonus episode, and it was a heist film, and it is called The Hot Rock.
That
Robert
was
Redford.
An adaptation.
That is another of these books. Donald E. Westlake is an interesting writer because he does write under his own name, but he also has a bunch of pseudonyms. Yeah. Rolf Passer, Richard Stark, which is the one that he used for this one, Alan Marshall, James Blue, Ben Christopher, John Dexter, Andrew Shaw, Edwin West, John B. Allen, Don Holliday, Kurt Clark, Barbara Wilson, Tucker Coe, P.N. Castor, Timothy J. Culver, J. Morgan Cunningham, and Samuel Holt, and then Judson Jack Carmichael. Those are all pseudonyms that he writes under. Like,
that's
why
crazy.
So many? It's so strange. Right? Very weird. Very, very weird.
That is crazy. I understand some use of, writing pseudonymously for, there are some legitimate reasons to do so, but that's crazy having so many. Right. That's dissociative identity territory.
Something going on. Yeah, something's going on. Anyway, this is based on the Parker novel, The Seventh. And Parker is a character that he has done a number of books in. When we talked about The Hot Rock, that was in the John Dortmunder series of books. That was Redford's character's name. But the Parker series is a totally different set of books. And we can talk about that in the, I guess we can just talk about it now. The Parker series, they have made a number of different films, and I'm just curious if you've seen any other. The first one is the one that was done right before this, Point Blank. Did you see Point Blank with...
that was Lee Marvin.
Yeah,
I did not see Point Blank, but I did see the next remake of this particular book, which was Payback with Mel Gibson.
So you saw that one. And in both cases, let's see, in Point Blank, the Parker character's name is changed to Walker. Then there's a book called Mise à Sac, or a film called Mise à Sac with Michael Constantine. Instead of Parker, he's playing George. The Split, Jim Brown is now McClain. In The Outfit, Robert Duvall plays Parker, but his name is Macklin. In let's see. In Slayground, Peter Coyote is Parker, but his name is changed to Stone. Like, they change it every time. Payback, the one that you just mentioned, Mel Gibson is Parker, but he's changed to Porter. And not until we have Parker, the film, in 2013, Jason Statham plays Parker and is the first time that is actually named Parker.
That's so funny. I haven't seen many of these.
I've seen none of them. Other than The Hot Rock, which isn't a Parker novel.
Yeah.
So of the Parker novels, I did see Payback, and I saw Point Blank. So I've seen the same two you've seen.
Well, we do have one more that's coming, and that is another adaptation of The Hunter, Point Break, Payback. Now it is a Shane Black film called Play Dirty, Starring, directed by Shane Black, written by Anthony Bagarozzi and Chuck Mondry with Shane, starring Mark Wahlberg as Parker.
Okay, he's staying Parker.
He's staying with Parker.
Well,
So,
Shane
there you
Black
go.
is really drawn to him, and it's interesting because he usually writes his own stuff, but he's adapting. But he and Robert Downey Jr. have actually been trying to do a number of projects, both film and TV, in the Parker series. So I wonder, is that one?
It was originally Robert Downey Jr. that was slated to play Parker in this particular movie,
okay.
but my hunch is Dr. Doom took that off the table.
Well, and I'm wondering if he's producing still. Like, does it say?
Oh,
is
that's
he
a
still
good
on
question.
as a producer?
Let's see. Probably, right? Yeah, Robert Downey Jr., he's EP.
Okay, there you go. So, yeah. Anyway, that's just the Parker books. I mean, this is a writer who has a ton of crime fiction, comic capers, sci-fi once in a while, and a lot of and then also has just done screenwriting and adaptations of other people's work. Like, he is the one who adapted The Grifters for screen in 91. Fantastic writer and storyteller, and definitely somebody I need to dig into more, because every time I watch one of the stories, I just genuinely really enjoy it. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And
All
I
right,
love
well,
these book series. Like, give me one of these book series. I'll just eat it for lunch. I love having a character that I can follow over. It's like Reacher and, Reacher,
Jack
Parker,
Ryan.
Bond, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right.
They just need to come up with better names for the shows, because they're all too similar.
Yeah. Don't care for it.
Yeah.
All right. What are we doing next?
I think that's it. So we'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by Ziggy, The Magnetic Buzz, Aves, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Is it you or me?
This is me. You know, what's funny is I went and picked my music, and I landed on the same track you did. And then I went in and I said, I saw that you did Ziggy, and I'm like, crap. And then I didn't know what it was. And I'm like, well, maybe it was a different one.
It was the same one.
And then I was like, crap, I picked the same track. So anyway, so you can imagine what mine sounds like now.
Okay.
Picture this, my friend. We are about to pull off the heist of the century. We're going to infiltrate Letterboxd HQ and make off with the ultimate prize, lifetime memberships for the both of us. I've got the plan all mapped out. We'll slip past security, crack their codes, and be swimming in unlimited access to the world's largest film database before they even know what hit them. Just imagine it. With these memberships, we'll have personalized recommendations, the power to connect with fellow film buffs across the globe, and the bragging rights that come with being part of an exclusive club. It's the score of a lifetime, and I want you by my side. Wait a minute. Hold on just a second. As I'm going over the details of our master plan, I've just had a revelation. I have been digging into Letterboxd's membership options, and you know what? This is actually an incredible deal. I mean, why are we even bothering with this heist when we can just sign up and get all these perks at such a fantastic price? Get this, with a free account, we already have access to unlimited films, diary entries, reviews, ratings, lists, and it's a pretty good solid foundation for any movie lover. But for just $19 a year, that's less than the cost of a monthly movie night, we can upgrade to Letterboxd Pro and take our film game to the next level. With Pro, we will be living the ad-free life with personalized stat pages that showcase our cinematic expertise. We can filter by our favorite streaming services and get alerts when films on our watch list arrive on those platforms. It's like having our own personal movie informant. And if we really want to live like the film elite, we can become a Letterboxd patron for $49 a year. That's the VIP pass to the most exclusive corners of the site. We can customize our posters, backdrops, and even our profile pics. It's like having our own private film festival 24/7. But here's the kicker. As avid listeners of the Next Reel Film Podcast, we can score a sweet 20% discount on both Pro and Patron memberships. And get this, it even works on renewals. It's like they're practically begging us to join. So why are we even considering this risky heist when we can just sign up and get all these incredible perks at such a fantastic price? Plus an extra 20% off? It's like we're getting paid to be film buffs. I say we ditch the heist plan And just sign up for Letterboxd Pro or Patron. We'll be swimming in exclusive features, insider benefits, and the admiration of our fellow movie lovers. And with that generous discount from thenextreel.com/letterboxd, it's like we're pulling off the ultimate cinematic coup without even breaking a sweat. So what do you say, partner? Let's put down the blueprints and pick up that promo code. We'll be the smartest film enthusiasts on the block, and we won't even need a getaway car. It's time to make it official and join the Letterboxd elite. thenextreel.com/letterboxd. Trust me, this is the best plan we've ever had.
Okay, wait till you hear mine.
Oh, that's funny.
Sequels and remake. I feel like we can skip
that. Yeah,
broke our
I
things.
just moved it up. Yeah.
All right. All right, Andy. Box office. How'd it do? Did it make boatloads of money that you're excited to talk about in picayune detail?
Boatloads of money that we could fill a stadium with and then steal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so frustrating. This is yet another film that has proved very difficult to find much information. For this film, I couldn't find diddly as far as what Flemyng spent to make it, nor could I find any info about how well it did. The only thing that I could find is that it opened November 4th, 1968. That's it.
What is $500,000 in 1968 in today's dollars?
I did that a minute ago.
You did? You already said that?
No, I didn't say it. But I looked at it and then we moved past it in our conversation. $1968 is $4.5
like $4.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's at least we can say some number. The amount of money that they stole.
There you go. So let's just hope the movie made it at least that much.
Right.
I'm sure that's how it works.
Well, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it just sometimes you just throw stuff on the list that you haven't seen and you get lucky. And I feel like this is one of those we got lucky. It's a good looking film, and it was fun. Did some interesting new things.
Yeah, I had a fun time with it, and I think that it spurred me on to want to watch more of Donald E. Westlake's adaptations. I might just watch all the Parker films. I think that would be kind of an interesting. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a series we should do at some point.
Oh, what a great series!
That would be cool. But also, I had a great time with this story, and so this was a fun one. I'm glad that you ended up picking it. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, wrapping up this return to 1968 crime films, Anthony Mann's A Dandy in Aspic.
Were you able to watch it? I assume you haven't
yet.
Watched it yet. Yeah.
I haven't even watched it yet.
Okay. All right. All right, listen up. We're putting together a crew, a special kind of crew, one that appreciates the art of the steal, the perfect cut, the cinematic masterpiece. I'm talking about the Next Reel family of film podcasts membership program. And we need somebody who can handle the intel, early access to the goods, before anyone else. Someone who can slip past the firewalls and get their hands on bonus episodes and in-episode content the rest of the world only dreams of. You in? We'll also need a getaway driver, someone who can navigate the crowded podcast landscape and deliver a clean, ad-free listening experience. A personalized podcast feed direct to your ear holes. No distractions. You think you can handle that? And we're going to need someone on the inside, access to the live stream recording sessions, eyes and ears in the Discord, exclusive channels buzzing with the behind-the-scenes intel. You'll be right there with us, shaping the narrative. The target? The Next Reel family of film podcast membership program. The payoff? Satisfaction of directly supporting the podcast you love and a mountain of exclusive episodes and content that'll make you the envy of every cinephile. So are you in or are you out? Visit the Next Reel family of film podcast today. Just head to truestory.fm/join for the details. And don't miss out, because this is your chance to be a part of something big.
Look at all the heisting we've got going.
We're so much heisting. Next week, it's dandy heisting.
Are you going to wear your aspic for next week?
You don't wear an aspic? That's an ascot.
Oh, yeah. That's what I was Aspic. What is aspic?
It's
Hold on, I
like
have to look. Here you go.
it's a
It's a
gluey,
savory,
sticky.
gelatinous jelly
Yeah.
that's often made from slowly cooking animal bones and shanks in stock. It can be used to coat and glaze foods, garnish cold dishes, or combine with other foods in decorative molds. Ugh.
It's a sticky wicket. It's the dandy is our principal character, and he's
Yeah.
stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it's
More
not.
films need to throw words like aspic in the title.
Yeah. That make you have to look up the title before you watch the movie, so you
you're
know what
like,
the hell it's about.
Yeah, what the hell
Yeah.
is that? That's gross.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's gross. It sounds like a very British thing. Like I kind of have this idea that, you at a family dinner, you'll get like haggis and a mold of aspic, and it's just bone goo.
That reminds me of this. When I was doing Nordic Noir on CinemaScope, there was an Icelandic film that we talked about, and he goes to this like restaurant, and he's just getting takeout, and it's essentially he comes home with a lamb head. It's just the head, and he puts it on his table, and he's just pulling stuff off of it and eating it, and it's like God, the things people eat in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
What do they say about us? They probably are like, God, all the fake
Twinkies.
things that you eat.
Yeah, I know.
And all the preservatives.
You're just eating microplastics straight.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, but you're eating a face.
Yeah, you're eating that. Ugh. Ugh. All right.
Okay. Letterboxd, Andy. It's Letterboxd time. It's time for us to peel back stars from other movies, claw them back, and apply them to this movie. What are you gonna do for the split?
I had a lot of fun with this one. It's a very easygoing heist film. It didn't break the mold for heist films for me, but I think in the scope of what we talked about in the 60s series that we just did of heist films and crime films that we're talking about there, like it still is doing enough here that I had a lot of fun with that. I had a really good time. I think 3.5 and a heart is a good place for this one. I found myself enjoying it quite a bit.
Andy splits a star for the split. Look at you.
Oh,
Look
in the
at
title.
you. I came in my head pledging whatever Andy says, I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to give it 4 stars and a heart. I really enjoyed it. I think the things that they end up doing with the movie that gave me the most joy are things I've never seen in other heist movies. And I thought that was really neat. So 4 stars and a heart. This is a worthy watch.
Yeah, it was a fun one. All right. Sure. Well, that'll average out to 3.75 and a heart on our account. We'll round that up to 4 stars and a heart over at Letterboxd. And you can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about The Split? We would love to hear your thoughts on this one. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Okay. Can I go first?
Do it.
Because this is going first is appropriate because I'm picking the first Letterboxd review of this film on Letterboxd. I mean, Letterboxd, we love Letterboxd. It just surprises me every time I look at these old reviews. This one is from the 12th of August, 2009. Were you on Letterboxd in 2009? I don't think so.
I was not, no.
So this comes from Paul Carupe with a 4-star review. Solid caper effort has Jim Brown robbing a football stadium, irony, with a veritable Dirty Dozen reunion squad of Ernest Borgnine, Donald Sutherland, Jack Klugman, and Warren Oates. Most of the action takes place after the heist, with Brown's girlfriend shot and the money missing. Underrated for sure, though it does get a bit draggy in the middle. Despite a couple pop songs, Quincy Jones' score is less annoying than usual.
Oh, ouch.
We didn't even mention Quincy Jones' score.
Right. No, we didn't. I enjoyed it. Quincy Jones, definitely has a style in particularly this era of the scores feeling very 60s-ish. There's just kind of this I don't know, is frivolity the right word? It's just the music style is just very bouncy.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it here. Funny enough, I actually watched another heist film over the last week called The Anderson Tapes, which he also did the score for. That one came out 3 years later. And it was more noticeable to me in that film, the score, but I still liked it. I don't know. I generally like Jones's scores. They're not always like, I wouldn't say like award-winning types of scores, but I have fun with it. And I thought I had fun with it here.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
I don't find it annoying here at all.
Good. Well, I've got a review that has no stars, but it does have a heart by Dankwit.
Is it Demi's? Oh.
It's Dankwit who said, saw this almost 3 years ago, and it still utterly blows my mind that one of the first film roles of an all-time great athlete was him spearheading a heist on one of the stadiums he used to play at. The NFL used to give 0 Fs. Shake my head. Yeah, I think that's another point that we didn't bring up. The fact that Jim Brown is this former athlete, and here he is acting, and he's stealing money from
his own stadium.
Like, that is just so perfect. There was a bit of meta humor with that wasn't that we didn't bring up, but I think it's definitely there.
Well, also because it's largely lost on me, because I know he was a football player, but I could not have told you anything about team dynamics where he was.
Oh yeah,
at the time. So, yeah.
I know. I think that may be why we both come into it that way, because neither of us knew him as a football player first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, OJ was the guy in the luggage commercials, right? Before he became famous.
That's true.
For other stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Letterboxd.